Hello, everyone, and welcome to our last webinar for 2022. I can't believe we're here already. So thank you very much for joining. We have a really great list of new features that we're keen to show you today. But before we get there, I'm going to quickly take us through the house rules for the session. Thank you. Just first of all, if you are experiencing any technical issues or you need any assistance with sound or visual, please put that on the chat box and our webinar manager will work with you to fix that. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask around the various features that we're showing or around the solution, please pop those into the Q&A box at the bottom of your bar. And we will have a Q&A session at the end of today's webinar, and we will definitely go through those with you. And Lee, our CTO, will take us through each of those. So please pop those in. No need to wait till the end of the webinar. You're welcome to pop them in as they arise. And we will just address them at the end. Just lastly, on the Q&A, you'll see there's an option to remain anonymous or to have your name added. Really up to you. Just make sure that you tick the box if you would like to remain anonymous. So that's just a bit of a house rules. And then, just quickly onto our agenda. So first off, Lee is going to take us through our internal compliance solution, specifically focusing on privacy. So from a European perspective, GDPR, South Africa, it would be your PAPIA, in Mauritius, it would be your Data Protection Act, but wherever you're based, the real framework and the essence of how it works would remain the same. So Lee's going to take us through that. Then we're going to go through some features in a live demo. So the ones we're going to go through today is around response enhancement. The second one will be the vendor view enhancement. The next two are really the ones I'm looking forward to in today's session, being the question bank and questionnaire enhancement, and then the pre-populate responses from previously answered questions. So I must say those two are the ones I'm really looking forward to. I know we've been hearing about them and seen snippets, and I'm really keen to see what the solution has to show today. Then just the last piece that we have on the agenda is around the integration between internal and external risk factors, and Lee's just pre-recorded that to show us what that is looking like at this stage. So that's really the agenda from a content perspective. As I said before, we will have a really nice Q&A at the end, so please pop your questions in as we go along, so that we can really have a good conversation around these topics. So that's really what we're going to go through. Lee, I'd like to hand over to you, and you can take us through the demo for today.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that introduction, Lynn. Really appreciate it. So just to really familiarize everyone again from a Phinity perspective, just in terms of our platform, the platform that Phinity supports organizations with relating to internal and external risk and compliance is made up of multiple modules that can be used interchangeably or on their own to be able to provide you with a solution that you're wanting to create within your environment. So if we just have a look on the far left-hand side, you've got your essential risk identification process, and then it runs all the way through to risk remediation management. You combine those two solutions, you essentially have your enterprise risk management capability. But really the core around Phinity, and you can see this in terms of the area, the inner core of Phinity, which is your internal controls and compliance and your external controls and compliance, as well as your process and project compliance management capability. This is where Phinity started its journey when we originally started developing the Phinity platform back in early 2017. And really our focus in that space has always been around the external controls and compliance, so third-party risk management, and then the internal controls and compliance, which is typically your information security management system, your privacy assessment, and application risk management. Now, primarily, Phinity has really kind of strengthened its capability on the third-party risk management side of things. But today we're going to take a little bit of a change around the internal controls and compliance and just showcase what we can do in and around that space. But again, within this particular platform, what you're able to do is take essentially the bits and bobs, or to quote our MD, our Lego set, and create the solution that you would want. We have the standard solutions that are available. So your third-party risk management, information security management, project, lifecycle insurance compliance, your procurement, your privacy, code of practice, continuous compliance, and TPRM. These are baked into the platform, the way of working, if you will. And really what I want to do today is just focus in on the privacy compliance. So it is on that internal area. And really the idea here, as Lynn said, is that the framework that we use with Phinity allows you to design the privacy capability that you would want inside the organization that you're supporting or that you're working for. And that's essentially what we're going to be going through today. I've also got a light demo in terms of how you could potentially put together your privacy compliance program within your organization. Again, it's very high level, just to kind of give you a sense of what it could look like. But any one of our partners would be able to take you on a much more detailed and granular view in terms of the implementation of a privacy program, both from an internal perspective and an external perspective with you. So let's get on to our privacy compliance overview. So when it comes to privacy, really the thing that you want to know is what am I supposed to be doing? And who's supposed to be doing it? When are they supposed to be doing it? And then finally, is it being done consistently? And that's really what, most regulators, regardless of whether it's privacy, is going to be asked, is it being done consistently? And then probably the questions that you as organizations are asking is, what to do and who should be doing it. And hopefully over the next sort of 20 to 30 minutes, we'll start to unpack that. And then hopefully during the actual demo, you'll get a sense of the actual RACI models that you could use within the way in which you're going to implement your privacy capability inside your organization. So let's talk about just some of the challenges. And I think this talks to pretty much any kind of framework or approach that there is, whether it's information security or privacy or cybersecurity, but really the kind of the breadth of the business impact, because you really need to think about your business. You need to understand your business. You need to contextualize every single process, how much data is going through those processes, where is that information stored? Is it carrying privacy information? Is it carrying sensitive or special privacy information? And how is it being processed? Who's processing it? Then you've got kind of additional stakeholders in terms of internal stakeholders versus external stakeholders. So essentially, are there any third parties linked to those particular processes, either from a supporting, as in you've outsourced that business function to them and you now are relying on them to actually process privacy data. Again, all of these additional complexities come into your business, and fundamentally your business is about creating widgets, not necessarily managing privacy. So again, the complexity of trying to unwind this and figure it out in your business. The other part is the reliance on third parties, both from the implementation, so getting people in who are not part of your business to learn your business so that they can really try and understand that. And then, of course, the outsourcing element is also quite a complex thing. And then the deep expertise across the multiple areas to actually understand what privacy is in an organization. How do you implement it? How do you manage it? These are really, not something that you can take lightly. And again, ideally, most organizations want their employees to be focusing on the widget that they create in order to sustain their business. Again, not to take it lightly, but that's fundamentally what you want to do. So in those sort of situations, what you need to do is provide the right amount of information at the right time to those particular people so that they can continue to create the widgets, do the job that they're supposed to do, but still maintain a level of compliance without impacting on the business. And these are just some of the challenges that kind of rise to the surface quite quickly. So how would you typically go about doing a implementation of Phinity to support a privacy program? So the first part typically happens outside of the platform, because this is really where you would do your analysis of the organization. So that would be, what are the data protection principles? What are the policies? Who are the stakeholders? What are the data protection frameworks that you're going to be using? Is it multiple? What is the geographic reach of it? And then what are the RACI structures, sort of roles and responsibilities across the organization, and who's going to be doing what, when, and how? Then we take it into a digitization stage. So the digitization stage is where you define your organizational structure within the Phinity platform. You create your various assessments. You design your business rules that will then trigger. Just as an example, if you've got a business unit and that business unit creates a new process, or there's a new project that's going to trigger a potentially new process, whatever the case may be, and you need to do a business impact, or essentially a privacy assessment against that to determine whether or not it actually needs to form part of your privacy inventory. And if it is, then do a business impact assessment on that particular process. Those kinds of business rules need to be configured into the actual platform. Then you get onto the actual assessment process. So firstly, you'll assess at an organizational level in terms of a gap analysis. Then from there, you would do a departmental view, and then the sub-processes within those departments to kind of pull out your entire inventory of assets across the organization, identify where there is where the sensitive information is being processed at particular sub-processes, what the control effectiveness of that, and then create the treatment actions associated to that. And then, of course, from a reporting perspective, you want continuous reporting, you want benchmarking, you want dashboards, you want to understand where your data is, if it's at risk, and what are the individuals doing about improving that risk. And then this is not a once-off situation. You're going to have to continuously reassess. And then to Lynn's point is that reassessment capability is really quite fundamental, because what you want to be able to do is you want to get through this on the first run, but what you want to do is have a capability that is a continuous improvement that supports continuous reassessment capability that can be a bit of a fire and forget, and allow each part of the business to maintain its own inventory of assets, if you will. And then that treatment action is really important. And I think this is going to be, something that is going to come down the line more and more and more as frameworks improve, is in terms of when there are gaps. It's not a problem that there are gaps. It's whether or not you're doing anything about those gaps. And do you have a trackable, traceable process in terms of being able to remediate those particular gaps? So again, this is Phinity benefits in terms of your privacy compliance. And think about this in terms of any kind of internal compliance. It could be your asset consent level 1, it could be privacy, it could be cybersecurity. But really what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring together a single repository of information. In this instance, a single privacy program repository of all of the privacy assets, so that they are visible, that they are trackable, traceable, auditable throughout their life cycle. There are clear roles and responsibilities in terms of who is the asset owner, who are the asset delegates, who is responsible for any kind of remediation, who's accountable for validating that remediation has happened. A sustainable program, which is who's doing what, when, and how, and then, of course, the visibility of compliance. So that provides you with that view in terms of, do I have any third parties that are touching my data? Have I assessed them? And then, of course, am I continuously assessing and understanding my risks associated to the privacy assets? So how does privacy compliance fit into the rest of the Phinity platform? And as you can see, this is when you really think about it, Phinity covers on a number of really core aspects of the internal privacy requirement, because firstly, it allows you to create that inventory of assets. It allows you to create it in such a way that you can assess at an organizational level, at a department level, at a sub-process level, that you're able to do your external control assessment from a third-party perspective, that you're also able to use multiple risk and compliance frameworks. So again, it doesn't just have to be just privacy on top of that. And then finally, just in terms of your risk remediation management, with everything feeding back into the remediation phase so that you're actually able to track and treat each one of those items through to remediation. So hopefully there were a couple questions along the way. So from a demo perspective, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut over to the actual platform now, and I'm going to touch on some of those new features first. And then once I've done with those new features, I'm going to run through a privacy onboarding of a sub-process under the Human Resources Department. We'll just run through that very quickly. We'll then cut over to a couple of the reports relating to that, and we'll finally come back for a little video and some questions. So there we go. So let's get going. Firstly, from our first new feature. Okay, so within the controls panel, you'll see it's not available yet, but you will start to see something called the reassessment configuration. For the reassessment configuration, under the sorry, not the reassessment configuration, the screen element configuration. So under the screen element configuration, I've already selected it, but there will be these additional items at the end here, which include the risk entity field, the risk entity stakeholder, and the risk entity additional information. So what's really nice about that is that within the responses page, you will now be able to actually pull in additional information so that you're able to create a single report with each one of those elements in. So if I go over to my assessments, and I've got a prepackaged assessment that is already available to me. So just as an example, I've got binder holder 1 just completed a while back. And if I go into the responses page, those that are familiar with the Phinity platform will notice that a lot of the same elements are there, except now that I've also pulled through the third-party fields. I've also got the recommendations there. I've got third-party stakeholder information and any additional information relating to, in this instance, black kite, supply wisdom, as well as some additional information. So as well as all of the actual questions relating to this particular vendor for this assessment. So what that means is that you'll be able to now save a copy via PDF of all of the third-party information, as well as all of the information relating to that assessment in a single file. We find that we've had a number of customers request that they want specific controls assessment with the actual third-party information coming through. So this will also be made available for information assets as well. So you could use it for your application, your privacy, your cybersecurity, and your ISO type assessments as well. So it's really, really simple and very easy to use and very easy to configure utilizing these screen elements. You can turn it on and off at any stage. So the next one that I wanted to touch on is just in terms of some of the enhancements that we've got within the vendor view that have come through. We've got a number that are going to be coming through in the next couple of days as well. But just to kind of give you a sense of what's coming available. So under the additional information, you would have seen the supply wisdom and black kites scores being available in a couple of our demonstrations. This is essentially our cyber risk rating partner. You can add this at any stage into your Phinity platform. Just contact our sales team. There is, of course, a cost associated to these additional fees, but it provides immediate value to you, and it provides you with a way in which you can cyber risk rate specific vendors. And where we see this being very useful is when you're dealing with high risk third parties that are providing, potentially providing outsourced services to you, or potentially even running specific client-facing services, where you know, if they go down, there is a massive impact in terms of your organization. So highly recommend that you look at that as a potential option. We are going to be expanding additional meta information that is going to be coming through from Black Kite, but really something that I would really recommend at least having a conversation with the team about. The next one, just in terms of the improvements around the vendor view, is that just in terms of, if you have a look under our agreements, we've got quite a big change in terms of the look and feel. So you see that the new grids have now come through into the vendor view, as opposed to the block layout. We kept the block layout because we had some feedback that sometimes the block layout is really nice because you get to see all of the information in one space. But you might also want to be able to, if you've got 20 or 30 or 40 records relating to this particular vendor, the grid view is really nice. And again, it just allows you to actually just sort very quickly the actual data that you would want in here. So just as an example. The next one is just in terms of the assessment. Again, the assessments provide you with quite a nice view with this grid layout. If you've got any outcomes, of course, that will be populated over here, but it just gives you a nice view where you can sort the fields, filter, and of course, select the year that you would want to see very quickly. So it just provides just that extra little nuance, UX capability in terms of the vendor view. We're really spending quite a bit of time with our clients and our partners trying and create the best version of this. This is the old view in terms of the block view versus the grid view. We've kept both. I think we'll probably continue to keep both, but this is just something that is really, I feel is really nice in terms of the way that we are laying it out. We are going to make some improvements just in terms of some of the agreements going forward, as well as some speed enhancements around our change history, as well as some additional changes around our grid, supporting parts for our grid. So as you can see, this is one of the older grid types versus this is the new grid. So we're going to be making further enhancements under this area. Right, let's get into the question bank and the assessment authoring capability and how do you create that. So I've got a relatively blank canvas here in terms of my question bank, but I think it's quite nice to see it in this way. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm in my controls questionnaire. So I'm in my assessment area right now. And inside my assessment area, I'm going to go in and manage the ISO 27001 assessment. And really what I want to do is I want to basically use this as almost like my base, and I want to use this to create my question bank, which I can then reuse in any one of my other questions. And what that will allow me to do is use my question bank to also pre-populate other assessments, even if they haven't been completed previously. So in this instance, I'm just going to edit this particular item. We've got our security policy over here. So this is our policy. As you can see, this is now based on a template. Here is the information. You can see this little green mark. It's based on a template. If I go into organizational information, we can see that we've got roles or human resources, background checks, verification, employee agreements, contractual agreements. Okay. So in this instance, let's say I want to take one of these questions from my assessment area and I want to pull this into my question bank so that I could use it in other parts of my assessment workflows that I use with my third parties or internally as part of a policy assessment. But in this instance, we're looking primarily at third parties, just as an example. So what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to export to the bank. Okay. What that means is that question is now available in my bank. So I'm going to go and save that. Continue. And go. Save the scoring. Nothing's changed. So if I now go and navigate back to my question bank, I now have my background checks and validation, as you can see, and it's in use. I can go and edit this. I can go and delete it, of course. I can change. I can add in additional options. I can move the answer options up and down. I can add in additional details relating to placeholders, text, all of that kind of stuff, which will automatically update across every single question that this template is in use with, which is really, really quite powerful. So if I now go back into my assessment authoring, I know that it's already linked to my ISO assessment. But let's just say, for example, I want to use that within my, let's say my COVID assessment, just as an example. If I go into that particular item, I go and edit the question, and I go into the organizational information, just as an example. What I can also do over here is I can go and add that particular question. So I go add template question. I go and look for that template question that I want, background verification checks, and confirm. It drops that particular question into the background as a template-based question now. So very quickly, very easily, I've taken one type of question from one type of assessment, I've pulled it into my bank, and I've pulled this into a new questionnaire. I, of course, can now update this. I can move it to different sections. I can delete it. I can add in additional information relating to supporting files. Again, I can update this from this particular point. And then, of course, I can save this question. Simply click continue. And okay. So what's really great about this is that you can actually create most of your questions going forward as template-based questions, which allow you to then scale your capability both from a management perspective and also support your organization in terms of doing assessment and pre-populating answers and answer options from previously answered questions, which I think is a massive, massive time saver. If somebody's answered one question in one part of the onboarding process, why do they need to re-answer it in a different question or in a different assessment? It makes absolutely no sense. Or if they're doing a reassessment from a privacy perspective, just pull those previously answered options and run them through. So I'm going to give you an example of that when I get to the privacy section. Then just in terms of, I just want to come back one last thing, just in terms of the actual types over here. So as you can see here, we've got some information relating to the specific type. If we edit any one of these questions, and I think what's really nice is that we can start expanding on this. So right now you can see that it's an ISO question that is being used. The idea here is that we'll be able to add tags that will allow it to be used in ISO or NIST and allow you to really kind of create a cross-pollination of different standards that can be used across an implementation. And then, of course, report on that. So it's still early days on the question bank, but that is really, I think, where we can add even further value to you and your customers going forward. Okay, so that's the question bank. And then just in terms of the next item, I just want to check my list here quickly. So I need to jump to previously populated responses, right? So the last one is just in terms of previously responses. So this is just an example from a third party. Again, we're coming into our assessment types. So let's say, for example, we've got this business resilience assessment that's been completed in 2021. Q2, we had this NIST health and safety checklist from 2021. There's a couple of key assessments here that you can see, just as an example, that probably do need to be reassessed. So I think let's go and have a look at the TPRM maturity assessment. So if I right click on the third party COVID one, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one over here, the TPRM maturity assessment. So in this particular instance, it is a risk profile. It's basically going to update the inherent risk rating. But the idea here is that it could be an internal party or it could be a third party in this instance. But if I go and click create reassessment, what it will do is it will take me to effectively like a little pre-populated view. It will actually allow me to change the assessment, which is amazing because maybe what I've done is I've recreated that TPRA maturity assessment and I've actually taken that into a new version, but I've used the template questions to be able to actually pull what can be actually pre-populated from previously on assessment. But it's just such a nice way to kind of allow you to have continuity through the actual process. I'm going to say send invitation and navigate, which means that you can actually go, it allows you to actually design the way in which you want to trigger that reassessment. If I click on advanced options, it will actually take me into a more detailed view in terms of even expanding on allowing me to send to other third parties relating to this particular onboarding. I'm not going to go into the advanced versions in this instance. I'm going to go with the standard view over here. But in this instance, we've got a 2 maturity assessment. And again, it just gives you a quick view. So you can see here very quickly responses from previous assessment. Please edit if no longer applicable. Again, clearly defined, planned, worked through. And if there was any context, as in files that were attached, information that was actually populated in the free text boxes, all of that would pull through into the responses, which is a really great way to actually enhance the way in which a user is able to complete that particular assessment. So you can see how much easier it is for me to actually complete that item. I think there was probably a file that I was supposed to add over there. Yes, there was. As you can see in this instance, there was probably a supporting file that was asked of me to go forward. So just an example, if I were to add that, there we go, and I would be able to upload and complete that assessment to completion. Hopefully there are a few more questions that are coming through. So yeah, we've got one more part of the demo that I want to go through. That covers most of the core features, just in terms of what I wanted to cover for today in terms of the new features items. So now what I'm going to be doing is going over to the actual demo for the privacy view. Okay, right. So let's get into it. Again, if I were to log into the Phinity platform, I would go into my application, my internal assessment capability. That. Go. So what I would do is I would come into my environment and I would have a quick view in terms of what are my information assets and business areas that are typically affected. You can see that I'm using the privacy use case on the right-hand side over here. We've got a number of HR sub-processes as well as business units, so HR, legal, marketing, and operations. This is just an example of a structure that you could use to support your privacy assets within your organization. So the way that some of our partners are supporting our customers in terms of the actual process of mapping out those various assets of inventory is they're using the risk entity onboarding. So this is just an example. Are we going to assess an existing asset? In this instance, we are going to create a new asset. It is linked to an existing asset. So if I go and look for human resources, I can see that human resources has been created. So I'm just going to do HR for forwarding as an example. The description, the internal information asset is Lee, information asset manager is Lee, information asset manager is me in this instance, or it could be somebody else. It could be Josh as an example. So this is just gives you an idea in terms of the way that one could actually create an asset. This is just a quick profiling process to determine whether or not there are volumes of information, and if so, how much information is typically processed, the type of information that is processed, and again, you're just trying to get a sense of what is processed within that particular area. Again, I would have selected all of that, but just from a demo and speed perspective, I'm going to highlight I'm just going to go through the salient points. So any detail shared with third parties. Again, that's quite important because you would also want to map the third parties that are used against those processes. We have a new feature that's going to be coming quite soon. And I'll run through that as a video when we get to the end of this. So what we've done is we've just done a quick view of a new process or project that is triggering relating to HR, and in this case it's HR reporting. And as you can see there, at a very high level, you can see that we have a personal information inventory assessment, which means that, okay, this is an asset that does need to go through a detailed personal information inventory. There is a recommendation that has been triggered. And as you can see, this is a really great example over here. So you can see that although it was only triggered at a low risk as in investors and directors, what we've got is actually an override that is not triggering in that data subjects are being used. So again, it's quite nice just in terms of the way that our scoring allows you to roll up or roll down and also see the detail and the granularity in terms of that. So this just helps us to trigger the ability to trigger that personal information inventory assessment. This is just an example of how, if you use those questionnaire, or the questionnaire bank, this is an example of how you'll be able to pre-populate your responses from pre-answered questions, and you'll then be able to trigger that and run that through to its conclusion. So that just gives you an idea in terms of how you would be able to actually run the actual process of helping the organization manage, maintain the inventory of assets. Let me just go back to my privacy view. Sorry, one other thing while I've actually got that view there, you would have seen a few ISMS assets. What's really nice about the internal controls and compliance capability is that you can actually run multiple frameworks, if you will, within the same area and allow you to actually be able to use it, because ultimately every single one of those is an information asset, and really they're relating to operational risk. You want a single place where you can bring all of those elements together for you to view. So just to come back to our privacy, so just as an example, imagine we get to next year and we want to be able to view, we want to understand, what has changed, what hasn't changed, what were the assessments that were completed against that particular asset. So we can see here there was a privacy profiling process, there was a personal information inventory that was triggered. Associated to that, there was some supporting files. Actually, no supporting files were pulled, but it gives you an idea of what is available within that. And again, remember when we get to next year, what you're able to do, again, you wouldn't necessarily do it from here. You would probably want to do it from the actual main campaign area, but what you'll be able to do is create that reassessment. And even to go into more detail, if you went into the advanced, you'd actually be able to set the date of when you wanted to run that. And as you can see from the advanced view, I can actually select multiple assets that I would then want to be able to run that assessment against, which is really exceptionally powerful, because then you're starting to marry reassessments with assessments of your various assets across your environment. And again, that kind of talks to, where are your actions, what are you working on, and some of the risks that you have. But finally, just in terms of some of the treatment actions that you would want to implement across your environment potentially. So let's just say, for example, I go into my human resources environment. If I identified an area which I felt needed some addressing in terms of, so let's just say, for example, in my gap analysis, I went into that particular item. So if I go into the responses for that particular assessment, it's probably closed out by now. But the idea is as I'm going through those gap analysis, so I'm just going to reopen it, which is great, which is a really nice way to actually show it. And again, there's an audit trail of everything and everything that I've done. So maybe as an example, some privacy roles. So as a designation, you haven't appointed the right roles and responsibilities. And again, that provides you with an immediate opportunity for you to actually create a treatment action item relating to this particular relating to privacy. You can see immediately that all of my participants populated, some details around by when it needed to be addressed, inherent risk grading, and it just provides you with a way in which you can quickly and easily address or create the actions for treatment. So in this instance, create privacy for hopefully you won't have that as an item. Again, this is just some dummy data that we were tracking with, and there we go. So we would be able to complete that and take that all the way through to remediation. I could navigate across to resilience, where I'd see all of my privacy gap assessments, and also any potential control failures that had occurred either from a privacy perspective, from an ISMS perspective, or any other item associated. So I'm not going to navigate across in this particular demo, but it is available for you. So I'm just going to go across finally just to the reporting dashboards, and then I'm going to come back to any questions that we might have. So in terms of a quick overview, so you can see just across the top here, I've got our privacy, our default, our ISMS, some pen test maturity assessments as well, just to kind of give you a sense of the flexibility of the platform and the way in which organizations can use this internal control and compliance capability. So in this instance, we've got 8 processes relating to the relating to our privacy environment. Just in terms of some data, we can also go down and drill down into each one of these particular items, legal, operations, or marketing, and we've got some inherent residual risk rating. So if we drill down into the marketing, it'll actually take us into a really detailed view for that particular assessment. I'll also cut across to the actual maturity for this one's actually putting up the CREST maturity, but I can actually just drop down on that and pull out the risk gap assessment to generate that. That brings us to the end of our demo, and I believe we've got 45 minutes or so for questions. Sorry, that came up. There we go. So there's our individual reporting, giving you the controlled assessments and the residual risk rating associated to that. I'm going to cut back to last 2 slides, and then we are good to go with questions. So from a new features perspective, so you'll see that we've got an increase in options with the ability to design questions and link them to different standards. I think it's absolutely amazing, that whole question bank, question design. We've also got a number of default questions that we've got within the platform. It's really a massive strength within the Phinity platform, and we've got some really, really great ideas in terms of how we'll be able to support our partners even create their own capability within that space. That is a little cliffhanger, I know, but it's really quite exciting. And then also just being able to kind of pull that reservoir of questions and link it to actual controls. High level of efficiencies in terms of pre-populating responses from previously answered questions, also from a reassessment perspective. And then just being able to increase the use of that risk information better, because what you're doing is you're actually creating because you're creating the capability for reassessment and responses to the same kind of template questions, you can actually start creating better trends and getting a sense of your risk. And because you're getting greater efficiency, you can get greater coverage across your organization, again, increasing your risk information, which I think is really quite fantastic. And this is one of the last features that I wanted to bring in. So this is directly relating to the privacy side of things. So in this instance, they're going into the third-party risk management area, okay? And so what they're doing here is they're going to link a third party to an information asset. So I'm just going to pause there. It's a little bit small, but hopefully you can use your glasses, lean in, magnify, and you'll see that it's an information asset in that instance. And if you can look closely, you'll see that it's linked to a marketing process there. So that would essentially be a sub-process under the marketing department. And again, you would be able to do this vice versa. This is just I'll give you an example. And then, so what's going to happen now is now that you've linked the asset to the third party, I'm just going to pause it again. What you've got here is this is, again, the view from the third party's perspective now. So let's say the inherent risk rating or the profile for that particular third party was high. It came out with a security of high. So you're dealing with a very high risk third party. There's some high risk third party processes that are there. Black Kite has come back and it's relatively green, but just in terms of your security lens, it just helps you try and make a really informed decision, because just even though this is dummy data, it supports you immediately. You can see that the profiling is high. Security is a high risk. They're processing marketing data, which is a high risk to the organization. And immediately you would probably be going sideways. But because you've got that additional lens from the risk rating, it just supports your business decisions in terms of, maybe they just need to have some additional controls in place. Maybe we need to have maybe 2 or 3 suppliers. Maybe we need to do an on-site audit. Whatever the case may be, it just provides that additional lens that you're able to use in your risk management. And that is it from features, functionalities, and all the rest of it. So, Lynn, have we had any questions?
Yes, thanks, Lee. That was really good. And just from that questionnaire bank that I was so keen to see, I can clearly see, how you would get efficiencies from that, how you can leverage, between different questionnaires. I can definitely see the value that we're going to be adding there. Just from the Q&A box, I've got a couple of questions for us to go through, some relating to the questionnaire bank, so I'll start with that. So the first one was, if you are copying a question, will it also copy the associated scores with that question to your, as you copy it across?
No, you would want to set the scores within the scoring area. So no.
Okay, thank you. Then Lee, the next one is around reassessments.
Yeah.
So can you perform a reassessment as a campaign? So, where you can select more than one third party at a time to be reassessed?
Yes, you can. So assuming that those third parties had completed that reassessment, then the answer is yes. What's also pretty cool is that if you had the question bank as well linked, so what the platform will actually try and do is actually try and firstly do the reassessment, of course, but what it would also try and do, it would still map, if you had done the mapping on the question bank, it would then still try and map, even if that third party hadn't completed that particular question when you're using a bulk assessment. So a really good example of that might be you did a bulk assessment and you had 1,000 third parties at that time. Then a year later, you do a bulk assessment. This time you've got 1,200 third parties. assuming you've set up your bulk assessments correctly, and assuming you've done your template designs and your reassessments correctly, the first 1,000, of course, would be the standard reassessment. The next 200 would also take into account the template and the way in which they potentially have been asked already. So it's not always going to work, but the system will try and increase the efficiencies to get the vendor to, or whoever is answering that particular question, to answer the least amount of questions again.
Okay, sure. That's I can just imagine how that's going to streamline things. And yeah, even if you're just validating what's existing, that would really save a lot of time. If you've done it well the first time through, it really should save you a lot of time. So that's great. Another question, Lee, specifically around integrations. You've spoken a few times during the session around Black Kite and Supply Wisdom. What other integrations do you have on the roadmap for us to look forward to?
We've had quite a few that we've been floating around. The one was around teams, to be able to add like multiple assets or multiple third parties via teams. We've done quite a lot of work in that space, but we've paused a little bit on the final integration of that. The other ones that we have kind of top of the line is around ServiceNow, Jira, and a couple of the other rating agencies. So kind of other types of rating agencies that would be kind of other competitors to Black Kite, or augment on top of that. And then also on the KYC side of things, I really see there's a lot of capability within our platform to be able to really support organizations with KYC challenges. And so as part of our integration as well is also looking at other ways to integrate additional meta information relating to, say, directors, organizations themselves, to be able to provide additional meta information and API integration. So it might not be direct tool sets, it might just be data points that we would want to integrate into the platform. Again, you saw how it was really useful in that last screen. If you've got the meta information and it's available, why wouldn't you want to use it?
Absolutely. I think the information just becomes so rich and useful. So I think the challenge I'd like to put out to the audience is, Lee's given a bit of a shopping list of what's next and what we can look forward to. But as a client, as a partner, you can influence that roadmap. And so, if you've heard something that is of particular interest to you, please let us know, what is that use case? What would the value be that it would add to your implementation or to your clients if you're a partner? And if there's anything that you feel would be quite valuable but we haven't mentioned, please reach out to Lee and just let us know what you're looking forward to and where you believe we could really integrate to add to the value that the Phinity platform brings to our clients. So, we really want to add, as Lee said, that information can be so rich, so much richer if we're, pulling in from other sources, and then, you can pull it all together and be able to analyze and really create something very valuable when you pull it all together. So please take us up on that challenge. I have another question has popped up on the Q&A, Lee. It's the question is, will ClickView API be available?
Well, ClickView is like Power BI. I'll probably get shot for saying that. But that should allow for our open API to be able to just suck in information directly via ClickView. I don't think there is any additional native integration that would be required. It's basically you hitting the same endpoints, and you then should be able to map out the data as you would want to. So I don't think there would be any issues with that. But yeah, happy to walk down the road with whoever is asking that question. I think I might know, but yeah, the answer I think is still the same as the one that I gave. The last point is just something on the open API. So the current open API is a GET open API. We are busy working on the put open API, which means that you'll start being able to write to the Phinity database quite soon with information. So yeah, if there's any data that organizations or customers have that is sitting in other systems, they want to be able to write it into the Phinity platform. That will also be a functionality that's available to you as well soon.
Okay. Thank you, Lee. Thanks for answering all the questions. Thanks, audience, for submitting those. I hope they've been informative. As always, you're welcome to ask any further questions, directly to Lee or myself or your partner. And yeah, we'd happily discuss those further. I think especially if you've seen any features that are of interest to you and you're keen to know how you can go about adding that to your current implementation, or how you can take it to market, please do reach out to us. Our team is really be happy to help you enhance your implementation to make sure that you're maximizing the license that you have and that you're using all the features that are available to you. So that's all from my side, Lee. I'm just going to hand over to you to do just the closure, and then yeah, thank you very much for joining the session.
Yeah, I think just in terms of like the features that you've seen. So as you can see, there's always changes and improvements through the last 4 webinars that we've run. There's this sort of constant feature drive and improvement within the Phinity platform. And one of the biggest challenges is always trying to keep up with those feature changes. So we are putting out knowledge articles with each one of those features. Sometimes we're a little bit behind the curveball on that, so please do keep an eye on that. Also on the left-hand side, as you log into the platform, you'll see that there are new features and functionalities added. If you get to a point and you go, I don't know what that is, please drop a support email to the team, and we'll happily jump on a call with you, walk you through it, walk you through the business case, walk you through the use case. And if necessary, one of our pre-sales engineers can even come in and help you set up a UAT type environment just for you to test it out, should that be something that you would want to do. So we really try and help our clients get over the line with all of these new features that are coming up, because we think that there is a lot of value and we don't want our clients to get stuck on old installations and implementations. So if you haven't done kind of an overhaul in terms of the way that you're running your privacy programs, your ISO programs, your third-party risk management programs in the last year, then I would highly recommend that you get in touch with the team so we can really kind of help you unpack each one of those features. This is our last webinar for the year. I'm actually a little bit sad about that. Because it's like we've got so many cool features that are going to be coming out in the next while. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to telling you all about that in February in 2023. But just like a passing thought in terms of where I think predominantly on third-party risk management side, where we're going to be going, is I think there's going to be, from an industry perspective, quite a big convergence between between contract management, between privacy compliance, between cyber risk rating, AML, and KYC type elements, all converging into kind of what we call third-party risk management. Currently, they're all typically quite isolated or separate type solutions. And I'm seeing quite a big convergence, because the more information that we're getting from other parts of the organization or from different systems, we're seeing more and more that Phinity is becoming that sort of single pane of glass, and that convergence of that data from all of those points, even if it goes through to sort of procurement in terms of the financial transactions, you still want to bring that into your operational risk management dashboard as you run those vendors through the systems. So I really see a big convergence within that over the next sort of 2-3 years. In fact, I think it's already started. No one's really given it a name, but at some point somebody will give it a name of some description that will be super cool and will go viral. But that is the direction that I think the industry is going to go. that is primarily and fundamentally, the route that Phinity is going to support its clients, because that's where we see it. We already do a lot of what I've articulated, but I think the idea is to bring all of that into one managed area. So, yeah, thank you very much for joining us again.